about if I just start at the beginning? you could be honest.
Because you know what? They have the sweat equity that went into that memory that they're making with their friends and family. And that's what's important with this, and that's what the I Am Real world's about.
Well, that's a great question. You know, one of the best things about a spring food plot is you get a second chance if it fails.
Chasing Giants with Don Higgins, brought to you by buyafarm.com, your source for farm, recreational properties, rural homes, and more. By tapping into Don's years of experience, dedication, and commitment, Chasing Giants focuses on the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails. Now, here is Don and co-host Terry Peer.
Welcome, everyone, to Chasing Giants, episode 87, October 16th, and we are celebrating in the shed. Don, you got some big news for everybody, buddy.
We are celebrating a dead deer.
Dead deer down, big buck down.
Absolutely.
You gave some teaser pictures on social media and got everyone getting anticipated of what happened, so Tell us what's going on and introduce who's here with us tonight.
Well, I got everybody fired up on social media with a post this morning. My first post, the winner of Lester's Feet raffle last summer, Brent Ramsey, was here. He is here. He's here with us, actually. He's going to be on in just a couple minutes. We're going to put him on the spot. He showed up yesterday. We hunted yesterday evening, seen some does too far away. Not that we was going to shoot them anyway, but they weren't close. Then we went out this morning, and the deer were moving pretty good. We seen a handful of does and fawns, a couple of young yearling bucks, and then a shooter comes by, and Brant got her done.
Dead deer down.
For sure. So we put a teaser picture out on social media with his hand on the rack, and I guess we should probably introduce our guest.
Go ahead.
We have Mr. Brant Ramsey from Cypress, Illinois, and his dad, Jay.
So Jay, for those who don't know, Jay was the one who actually won the raffle.
Yep.
And we called him from this shed when we did the live. And you didn't tell us then, but I think a couple, was it a week or so later, or later when you were talking to Don, you said that you wanted to gift it to your son, right?
Certainly, yes.
So what was that all about?
Well, honestly, I'm not really a bow hunter, and Brant had started bow hunting a little bit, and I thought this would be a lot better opportunity for him to experience, and it certainly has been, than anything that, would mean a lot more to him than it would me, and I couldn't be prouder as a father.
Yeah, so I didn't know this till we were over at our buddy Kyle Harmon's house getting pictures today. This is your first bow kill.
Yep.
So Brant, how old did you say you were? 21?
Yes, sir.
So you guys are gun hunters from Southern Illinois, but this is the first deer you've been able to kill with a bow. So this was a big deal.
Yep.
So I now understand a little bit about why your dad, kind of teed this up. So this was all kind of orchestrated. When did they come up and first talk to you, Don?
Well, they came up this summer. I don't remember when it was. I think in August, maybe early August.
Showed them around.
Yeah, we met and had lunch, and then gave them a little tour of the farm, and took them for a drive around the area, and kind of give them an idea of what the experience was going to be like. And then Brant came up and hunted for about 3 days early in the season, and
opening weekend. Yeah, because you came back from Iowa.
Yeah, I was in Iowa October 1st, and I think he was here the 2nd. Was it 2nd?
Yep.
And we didn't do so well. Actually, the first time ever in my life, 2 hunts on this farm, we did not see deer. And I felt like, man, I brought this guy in to show him some deer, and I can't even show him some good bucks, and I can't even show him a deer. So we was, committed, though, that we was going to get him a deer no matter how many trips it took. And if he wouldn't have got a deer on this trip, he would have came back during the rut and at least once, if not multiple times. And then if that didn't happen, we would have hunted the late season. So
as we were all looking at the forecast, you kind of looked at the same thing I did and saw that we had about a 20-degree drop in temperature. and wind shifted. I think we had rain up here through last night.
Right.
And I think there was a wind shift from the south to the northwest, and I think tomorrow is the west. So weather front pushed through, hunting the backside of a weather front. You called this guy and said be a good idea to get up here this weekend.
Right.
So that's the reason I came up from Kentucky, was to also hunt. So, for all those people who always listen to Don and I say never hunt mornings, you killed one on a morning in October on Don's farm. So that's even
Yeah, I know I'm going to catch some grief about that. So here's a tip for you listeners. If you want a question selected to get a free T-shirt, put me on the spot about October mornings, and I'll give you a good explanation.
Yeah, but I'm going to have Brant walk through the hunt. But when the first question I have for you is, out of all the stands that you've hunted, because you've been in 2 trips now, you've hunted different stands around the farm.
Yep.
So what was different about the 2 places that he's taken you in the mornings versus the other ones? And I'm not going to ask you a wind direction.
Oh no.
But what's the difference in those 2? Because you've hunted 2 mornings, I think, haven't you? Didn't you all hunt?
Yeah, we
morning?
did, but we hunted the same stand both
Oh,
mornings.
it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's different about that stand?
The only thing I noticed, or off the top of my head, just it seemed like really, really easy access, and no way that they could have walked anywhere we walked.
Yeah. So where we walk, you and I hunted tonight. If we tried to walk in where we were tonight, it's hard to tell how many deer we blow out of that field, wasn't it?
Right.
So it was a matter of there's probably only two spots on this farm that you would hunt in the morning.
Yeah, and
in October.
Yeah, one thing I want to point out is this Lester's Feet deal that you started, Terry, is it's really your foundation, but I'm committed to it to the degree that I would take these guys, the winners, to any stand on the farm. And, this morning the stand that Brant shot his buck out of is the very same stand that I shot Mel from a year ago. And yesterday evening was the same blind I shot Smokey from. So when these guys win these raffles, I'm not holding back. I'm not taking them to Plan B option, out in the middle of nowhere. They're going to the prime locations. And, we just, we've got our heart is for these families with sick children.
Yeah.
And we want to do all we can to help them. We don't want to be holding back. And I'm not holding back at all when I take somebody hunting.
Yeah, that's that stand that he shot that one in. Really, that's been left for just a rut stand for you since you put it up. So
right.
But yeah, all in on this trip. We got it done this morning. So why don't you walk us through start to finish? You woke up this morning, headed down to the house. You actually accessed this stand by walking through the pasture.
Right.
Where behind the barn, you got to walk through the pasture to get to it. So what was the conditions this morning? What was the wind direction?
Wind direction was northwest.
Northwest wind. All right. So walk us through the whole hunt. Tell us what happened.
We went out. It was very cold and chill. Well, not very cold, but pretty chilly. Went out early. Got up. I think the first that came by was the group of 3 does and a small buck. I think it was a yearling, and then another yearling came by later. The 3 does came by again.
Were they milling around on acorns, or
Yep.
what were they doing?
Yeah, there were some big oak trees right there, and they was just coming by real slow, eating acorns as they went past.
Gotcha. So what time did the shooter show up?
Showed up. It was
around 8:30.
Around 8:30, almost. I'm getting close to 9. Yeah.
So for the listeners here, this stand is a little bit different. The cameraman stand that Don was in is quite a ways away from the shooter stand.
Right.
So it was a little bit. He can't tell you shoot or don't shoot. So I think he was trying to give you. He'd set up some hand thumbs up, thumbs down, because there is some bucks on this property that's on the do not shoot list. So when this buck walked by, was he on your side or Don's side? Which direction did he come from?
He came from my side.
Okay, so did you see him when he first came out?
Well, when I seen him, he was right under Brant's tree, but coming from behind him.
Oh.
And I didn't know that he'd been watching him for 3 minutes. I can't see the deer because he's blocked by there was a giant oak tree the Brant's stand was in, and there was some brush down low, a couple cedar trees and such, and I didn't see the buck walk up there. And, I look over there, and all of a sudden there's a buck standing, 3 feet from the base of his tree. And he's a shooter buck, and I'm going berserk trying to get his attention. Like, there's a shooter, and he's just sitting there like nothing's going on. Bo's still hanging on the hook, and I give him the motion.
You've already been watching it.
I'd been watching it, but I really didn't. I didn't know if it was a shooter or not, so I didn't want to do anything till Don gave me a signal.
Okay, so we got a shooter underneath of you, but not knowing if you have the green light. He was a shooter to you.
To me, oh yeah.
But you didn't know if you were getting the green light from Don.
Right.
All right. So did you finally make eye contact with him, or what happened?
Oh yeah. He saw it, looked at me, made the motion to pull back on it. So.
Yeah.
So what happened then?
Well, he went for his bow was on the hanger, and I had my video camera on the arm beside me, so I went for the camera, and he went for his bow, and we both moved at the same time, and one of us spooked the buck.
Okay.
And he started to take off, and I let out a mouth grunt and stopped him. And Brant got his bow and got his release on and everything, and he still was really nervous, was started walking away, and I grunted again, but this time Brant was at full draw, and when I stopped him the second time, he shot and made a good hit, and the buck didn't go far at all.
So how far away was he when you shot?
Little under 20 yards.
Okay, so chip shot range. So was your heart beating out of your chest this whole time, or this is your first bow kill?
Yep.
But are you just going absolute nuts inside, or were you staying pretty chill?
I was kind of going absolute nuts, but I think I was as chill as I could have been. I think.
Yeah. So
he looked cool as a cucumber from where I was sitting. I'm not even sure his heart was beating.
Well, we haven't even looked at the footage. We do think we have pretty good footage of this, and our plan is to produce a video. We after Don sent the text to Wes and I that you had shot one, we kind of all talked, and I was only about a half hour away, so I ended up meeting you and Don over at Kyle Harmon's from Team Radical, who does a fantastic job all the time taking pictures. So by the time this podcast airs, I'm sure there'll be some pictures of you holding your buck out there. So we said you were going to be famous after this, and not only will all the young single women of Instagram be wanting to know who you are, but chasing you down. But I think after we get some B-roll footage of your we took it to the taxidermist, and I'll let Don talk a little bit about that too. But after we get that deer back in about a month, we're going to close the story and actually produce a video for you, and also to promote Lester's Feet's next year's raffle. So there was quite a few other people that kind of came into play on this hunt. Why don't you talk about that a little bit, Don?
You mean after the? Yeah, we after we took pictures at Kyle's, and we went to B&M Venison Processing, and Brian and Maria Teets own that business, and they're taking care of the processing of this deer. Great people. They process all my deer and yours too, Terry. So. Highly recommend them if you're in the Effingham area or even anywhere in central Illinois. And then Justin Nice of Teener's Taxidermy donated the mount for this buck. So then we went and met with Justin, and Brant got to pick out a form for his buck, and Justin's going to put it on the priority list, and he said within about a month he'll have it done. So these guys will be coming back in about a month, and we'll finish up the video production and have it out there before too long.
Yeah, and then after we took the pictures before you all left, I went ahead and pulled the 2 front teeth out of him and got on the phone with Heather from deerage.com, and she's going to expedite the forensic aging of that buck. So you have the full story of it. By the time you get him back from the taxidermy, we'll know exactly how old that deer is. So really good 8-pointer, just bruiser of his neck was already just huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're really excited, but I'm only gonna put you on the spot once.
All right.
You're a young man. I kind of hazed him a little bit accidentally. I thought I left something in the blind, and I sent him from the truck all the way back to the blind to get it, and then it ended up being in my pocket. So I hazed him just a little bit on accident. But this question's gonna be really putting you on the spot. When we were driving over to hunt on my place tonight, you started talking about your dad introducing you to the podcast and how you started listening to Don. And you said that you told your dad that we could never hunt like Don because we're not in big ag country.
Yeah.
Okay, so that we hear that a lot
Mm-hmm.
from other people around, the people in Georgia or people in the mountains of West Virginia. We hear that, we can never do what Don's doing because we don't live in this big open ag. After hunting here with him for now, I don't know how many days, 6 days or whatever,
Yep.
What's at least some takeaway that you've learned from this to take back to your all's property in southern Illinois where you got big connecting woods, bluffs, rock faces, topography is completely different down where you're at. But what's something that you can take back and after hunting with this guy for as much as you have?
Taking back the access, the wind direction, not tromping through the middle of the property, which is what I guess I hadn't considered that. It's obvious, but hadn't ever considered it as that big of an issue. And then just having like Don's property has a lot more woods, everything that the properties around doesn't have. Just having that thing that makes your property stand out.
Yeah. Well,
Good answer.
I think he's got what most people still, after a long career of hunting, still have a hard trouble with, and that's intrusion. Minimizing how much we're pushing those deer. Well, as a father, who you didn't do this to win a hunt, you did this to help families with sick kids. But you're sitting here watching your son just finish up a successful hunt with Don. What's all this mean to you?
Well, it means a lot to me. I mean, I was pulled in by the foundation that you started, Terry, when you first started talking about it. And Don talks about givers and takers, and he's my son, but I mean, here's a real good example of a giver. This guy right here, Brant, he's the guy that he'll give the shirt off his back to anybody to help him out. So I think the full circle is certainly proud that this came together and that he was successful. That his first, what an opportunity! Your first bow kill with Don Higgins on Don Higgins' farm. In the same stand that he killed Mel in. Just a huge opportunity. I'm just glad we could be a part of it, and I want to see this thing grow bigger because what you're doing with the foundation is to me is huge. There's more to life than hunting and our favors and our hobbies, and I think there's always somebody out in this world that's got having a rougher day than what you are today, is the thing that I guess I'd like to say.
Good. We're happy to have you. Glad you came up. I hope this hunt opportunity created friends of all of us for years to come. So
For sure.
Yep. Well, what else we got to talk about tonight other than a buck down? Big old first archery buck down.
Yeah, that's the big news of the day for sure. But I also want to talk about my consulting business because I've just been flooded with calls here. And I've literally got just about all I can handle for this year. So I just wanted to kind of make an announcement that, from this point on, anybody that contacts me about consulting this winter, there's only really two options. One, I'm going to have a standby list that there's no guarantees that I'll make it to your place this winter. And the other option is business partner Wes Delks has been consulting on properties for a few years now. That would be him.
We need a soundbite that says the prodigy.
Wes is actually with us tonight, folks.
We just made his face turn red, and there's only 5 of us in the building.
But, in all seriousness, I trust Wes. I told someone this week that if I had a property and I needed someone to go hang a stand on and scout it and hang a stand, and I would definitely trust Wes to do that. I've known him since way before he was involved with Real World. Him and I had a lease together. He's helped with projects on my farm. And the thing that's always struck me about him from, when I first met him, he was just a kid. I still think he's a kid today, but that's just because I'm an old fart, I guess. But is he's all ears, and he's not. A lot of people, when you meet them, they're trying to impress you with how much they know, and so their mouth's always running. And Wes has always listened and asked questions. If his mouth was running, he wasn't trying to teach me something. He was asking me something. And I certainly don't claim to know it all, but, as I see him today, I can see a lot of myself when I was younger. And but he's way more advanced at his age than I was at that age. And I think, I hope part of it's because I've rubbed off on him a little bit. So anyway, when I recommend him to do consulting, I do so with the utmost confidence. And on the rare occasion that he may have a question about a property he sees, he doesn't hesitate to give me a call or shoot me an aerial of that property or whatever. And so I just want people to know, I'm booked full. I am going to have a standby list, which I may or may not get to you if you're on that list. But Wes is a really good option for you as well.
Well, welcome, Wes.
Thanks for having me on.
The prodigy. Are you going to come up with instead of Higgins Outdoors, do Prodigy Outdoors or something like that?
Not quite. Nope. I'm just
Prodigy.
glad I get to be on so I can defend myself if we start talking about saddles or anything.
You don't listen to the podcast anyway. He doesn't.
Oh, I do.
You're the only consultant that has its own billboard with you in your underwear on I-70 between Brazil and
Lies.
Terre Haute, Indiana.
All lies.
On the north side, people. Just look on the north
False.
side of I-70.
Not at all. Not true.
So talk a little bit about consulting. What do you like about it? What's your plan? How people can contact you, do all that? Because, Don clearly has stated that, you can get on a standby list, but let's face it, the likelihood of that opening up is going to be
Pretty
small.
slim.
The only thing that might happen is if you're traveling and you do have an open day and somebody's on a standby list and you're in the area, that might open up. But
Right.
let's talk a little bit about where you're going to be based out of and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I'm really thankful for the opportunity I've had just to learn from Don. It's really a blessing. I mean, I've got the chance to be around somebody that's top $5 average, 205 inches or whatever that average is. So every single chance that I've had to learn whitetail strategy from him, to me it's like the gospel. And so I implement it. I've, like Don said, had the chance to be on his farm, hunt places together, set up new places, go with him on consulting trips, and to see that over and over again, and then help teach other people that Higgins system, if you will, is really fun to do. And last year I was on about 60 different properties in 14 different states in just a handful of months. And it's really fun to hear as the season progresses. I just got a phone call from a guy in New York that shot a big deer this week, and had a guy that is a crossbow hunter, and he's got an electronic sight, and the battery in his electronic sight died this week, and he had a booner at 20 yards, and that electronic sight was out, and he was calling just to tell me about his hunt. But it's really fun as the season progresses to hear about the success stories and what people are doing with their properties, and continue to help them.
So where are you going to be based out of, and how far are you going?
I'll be based out of Illinois and Indiana, and then as far east, west, north, and south was necessary. So 14 different states last year. And
So you're a young man that doesn't mind driving. Don's getting to where he doesn't like it quite as much.
Don likes his own bed instead of motels. That's what it really boils down to.
I put on over 40,000 miles on my truck last consulting season. So
Wow.
I think that's really important to anybody that's considering, Wes as a consultant. Is he's not brand new. Like he said, he did almost 60 properties last year. I think it was 58, wasn't it? But you might have did a couple more after you told me 58. And you was doing them a year before that or two.
Yeah.
So it's not like you've never looked at a property before and you're brand new and you're just, this is your first go-around. And so they are getting someone with experience.
Well, and there's two things that, we pick on Wes a lot just because we like to pick on somebody, and he ends up usually being the first one around.
Because he's the youngest.
Yeah, I was in that boat.
Well, I'm going to interrupt you. You're
Uh-oh.
picking on me on saddles. It actually turned out pretty well for me this past week. I had
Yeah?
a guy reach out to me on Facebook Messenger to ask me about saddles, and I ended up selling him my saddle. So he came over to my house.
Yeah.
But you guys won't be getting any commission from that. So.
Okay, well, yeah. We, I hate to say it, but we told you so.
Yep.
When he went.
Had to try it.
So, the other thing that people who follow Wes, even the buck that you killed in Kansas this year, that was actually a property that you had set up and done a job on. And then, you just over the last couple of years, you shot some absolute toads. So it's not a situation where a lot of people are out there giving advice on properties that have never put it in action and seen it. But for the other people that don't know who Wes Delks is, I'm gonna go back to a little bit of a story about right after Wes joined Real World, and we had our first meeting with one of our most important partners, and he was so sick he couldn't even eat lunch. We went out to lunch. He was so nervous that he wouldn't even eat.
I remember.
And I was just kind of laughing because I'm in business and do these meetings every day, and just seeing Wes.
He's come a long way.
But what struck me that day is I noticed that before we walked into that meeting, and it was an important meeting, he was over by himself and he prayed. And I looked over when we sat down at the table, and he had his Bible right beside him the whole time. So that's probably one of the things that I admire most about this young man, that most people his age, you talk about his ability as a hunter, having a friend, a boss, because I guess technically, yeah, you're my boss, but having somebody at a leadership role at Real World, but also having somebody kind of in our small circle that has the faith of this young man, I think that speaks a lot to him. So
For sure.
You've come a long way since not being able to eat before a big meeting. You're still carrying your Bible around everywhere, but we think the world of you and wish you the best of luck as you start expanding your consulting business.
Appreciate that.
I got something that happened this week to me that was kind of funny. I didn't know it, but somebody posted a video that had an excerpt from a podcast that we did back, I don't know, about a year ago, and had some drastic differences of opinion about hunting mornings in October and pressure. Mm-hmm. And you made kind of a little comment on it, but I was shocked to the point that I didn't even know they were going to do it. And I don't know if anybody else saw it on Exodus's trail cameras, but it's hard to get the context when they take an excerpt like that. But the point that I was trying to make in that is every property is different, and intrusion is the worst thing possible. And I guess just what kind of rubbed me the wrong way about all of it is there's still a bunch of people out there that think it's okay to spook deer. I don't get it.
Well, and yeah, we've said it before, Terry. We're talking about hunting mature deer. And when we're talking mature deer, we're talking at least 5.5 years old. And that's a totally different animal. Yeah. And you can get away with things with 3.5-year-olds that you're not going to get away with on 5.5-year-olds.
Yeah.
And, I don't know how many hunts I've been on this year. Not all that many. Most of them, they've all been with Brant on his 2 trips here, except for one in Iowa. I've not seen a buck older than 3.5. The buck that Brant shot today is the oldest buck I've seen so far in October. And it's easy for a guy to get on the internet and spout off and not have any backing. You know, he's never killed a buck over 5.5, or if he did, he lucked into one, and all of a sudden he's an expert. Kill a bunch of them on October mornings, then come and talk to me, because by the time that happens, I'm probably going to be in the ground 6 feet under. So
yeah, we've made the analogy of Moneyball. You're playing the law of averages, and and the other thing that I mentioned on that is there might be some properties, and I was speaking in that interview about my property, my specific property that I can't hunt mornings because I don't have a way in. Mm-hmm. This property here, which is set up probably as one of the best whitetail properties in the country, how many stands do you even have on this? Blinds and stands, ballpark?
Oh, there's around a dozen.
So 2 of them you would be able to have access. So I think it's just that whenever someone says their opinion or give advice and it's supposed to be applied to every situation that's the first indication that they're full of crap. Yeah. Because no 2 situations are ever going to be the same, and everybody's got a little bit different, environment, place to hunt, and I never see. And when you and Wes are doing with your consultings, that's why you don't want to do stuff off of aerials. You have to be there and actually see it in person. Otherwise, you could sit on your couch and do all this consulting if it was all the same, and one idea might work for every property.
And I'll throw something else out, Terry, is if there would have been a buck I want to shoot on this farm this year, there's not a shooter here this year, just so everybody knows. There's a couple of really nice young bucks, 4-year-olds, that I want to live and pass. In fact, Wes seen one of them this evening. If this would have been a year ago when Mel was back there, we would have taken a totally different approach to hunting this farm. And I promise you, if next year's winter, I'm going to give it my all to get you the best buck that I can get you. And you're going to shoot a buck that's at least 3.5 years old. But if I got a shooter on this farm, we're going to go about things a little bit different than we did this year.
Yep. Yeah, and that's expected. There's nothing wrong with that. So while we're talking a little bit about this October lull, let's talk a little bit about the recurve post that you made before we move on to the biofarm segment.
Yeah. Well, I'm guessing a lot of people seen the post I made. Actually, it was just yesterday on October 15th.
You were quite the specimen back then, by the way.
Yeah, I was a stud, wasn't I?
Young buck. Spring chicken.
But yeah, it was a picture of me with a recurve, a buck I shot with a recurve back about 30 years ago. I think it was about 1990 when that happened. Anyway, I got a lot of comments about the recurve, and I actually had a question submitted this week. I don't remember if I picked that one or not. I have to look at my list here when we get to that point. But somebody asked why I don't, if this is a year where I don't have a giant to chase, why don't I add a little challenge and hunt with traditional gear? Well, I went through that phase, folks. I did that for 2 years. I actually shot my very first buck with a recurve back in 1981, same year I graduated high school. And then soon after I went to a compound, but then I had a couple of really good friends from Ohio that would come and hunt with me every fall here for a week during the rut. And then I would go to Ohio and hunt with them for a week. And both those guys shot traditional gear recurves. And they ended up both passing away within 2 years of each other. And the first one, Tom Simpkins, some of you listeners from Ohio might remember the name Tom Simpkins. He was an outdoor writer, wrote for some of the newspapers there in Ohio. He passed away, and then the other friend was Jake Miller. And before Jake passed, he managed to get Tom's old recurve bow from Tom's wife for me. And I got that bow, and I decided I was going to use it for a year or so in memory of my friend Tom, and I ended up using it for 2 years and shot a couple nice bucks with it, and one was in the photo. So, I've been through that, and, it was pretty emotional when I started because the the friend that had owned that bow. I'd just lost him. And but after 2 years, and I'd shot a couple bucks with it, I realized that I was no more proud of those bucks that I shot with a recurve as the ones I shot with a compound. And I was a whole lot better with a compound than I was a recurve. And I just couldn't see myself out there, wounding deer or taking a chance to wounding deer. And I was at a point in my life where I was working a lot of overtime at the job that I had, so I didn't have a whole lot of time to practice. I think if you're going to shoot traditional gear, you got to practice a whole lot more than you do if you're just shooting a compound. So I only did it for 2 years, but I went through that phase. And it's like you get these guys that say, well, why don't you come and try that on public ground? Well, guess what? I've got cameras on public land in 3 states right now, or 2 states right now. I did have them in 3 states. I pulled the cameras I had on public land in Iowa. But, it's easy to make assumptions about people and think that they're totally different than you. But I say it all the time. I'm just a simple country boy. I started out with absolutely nothing. I was so poor. My wife and I, when we first got married, I've said this many times, we were so poor that more than once we had the electricity or power shut off to our house. And it's been a slow struggle to get to where we are today, and it's been a struggle for me as a deer hunter. I wasn't just born with a farm. I worked to just have the 120 acres I got now. I paid for every square foot of that farm, and that doesn't make me any better than anybody else. But I think a lot of people look for excuses. And instead of looking for excuses, I've always tried to look for solutions. I want a hunting farm, so what do I got to do that? Well, for me, it meant I wasn't going to buy new pickup trucks. I wasn't going to have a motorcycle. I wasn't going to have a fishing boat. I wasn't going to have this, that, and everything else. Instead, I was going to invest my money in a property. And I did that and eventually paid for it. But, basically we all make choices in life, and that's where we're all at today is because of choices we've made. And I just get a little bit irritated at times when people look at me and they start making assumptions and they don't know anything about my past. So when someone says, why don't you grab a recurve bow and try that, or why don't you go try that on public ground? Well, guess what, folks? I've done it. I've been there. Yeah. I've shot bucks on public land, and I've shot them with recurves.
Yeah, it's we can spend time talking about the haters all we want, but the bottom line is we can both sleep at night. Brant can sleep at night. He's going to sleep good tonight knowing that, we put in the time to prepare as best we could. It's not always going to go perfect, but when it does, it's sure nice to celebrate with buddies about it. So with that, why don't we move on to the Buy Farm Property Week.
Buyafarm.com is your source for farm, recreational properties, rural homes, and more. Now, here is Don Higgins with this week's featured property.
All right, this week's featured property is an online auction for 99 acres in Monroe County, Illinois. This property is right on the Mississippi River. You really need to take a look at the listing for this on the buyafarm.com website. It actually includes a 21-acre island in the Mississippi River, but then on the mainland, if you will, there's 27 acres of tillable. With some marketable timber. It's good for, whitetail turkey, and then you got the waterfowl hunting right there on the Mississippi. But there's a lot of options with this property as far as hunting and fishing, whatever, and you're not going to find many properties like it. Again, it's an online auction in Monroe County for 99 acres. The agent is Don Bailey, and Don's phone number is 618-919-1031, and go to the buyafarm.com website and check it out. One thing I can tell you is as we're featuring these properties, they are having great response, and these properties are getting sold pretty quick. But I think this is a property that at this auction you may get a good deal on it, so be sure and check it out.
So it's got an island in the middle of the Mississippi River?
Yeah, that's what it shows. Wow. You can see it on the aerial too.
Everybody, I've heard of people wanting their own private island.
21 acres.
The island's 21 acres?
21 acres is the island.
That's big.
Yep.
Wow. That'd be an interesting little spot to go hang out on. All right. Well, visit buyafarm.com and search what county is that they can search in. Do you know?
Monroe County.
Monroe County. So search Monroe County on the Buy a Farm website. Thank you to them for their support of the podcast. So we got time. We're running a little long, but you got a couple questions that we can get through tonight?
I do. We'll just keep going until you tell me time's up.
All right.
The first question comes from Kyle Malone from Alma, Illinois. Kyle gets right to the point. He says, "Hey, Don, what's the best possible advice you can give to someone with long-term permission ground that holds a lot of big mature bucks but is quite small with very limited stand positions?" Kyle, you perfectly described a lot of the properties that I have permission for. One thing, good piece of advice is don't talk about it to anyone. You don't want anybody to know you're hunting there. I wouldn't even want my truck parked near there. I'd just, get your stands ready, keep your stands in place, whatever, but have somebody drop you off or park your truck somewhere else and ride a bike or whatever you got to do. The other thing is do whatever you can to stay on the landowner's good side and make sure they know that you really appreciate the fact that they're giving you access to their ground. Christmas cards every year with gift certificates in those cards to the local restaurant. Drop by with some deer sausage or whatever. Just make sure that they know that you really appreciate it and that you don't want to lose that. Let them know that you treat that place better than you treat your own ground. And then keep your mouth shut and don't let anybody else know you're there.
Let's see if Wes Delks has any other ideas besides that one.
If you want to chase a giant, you got to have there's got to be a giant there to chase. So I'm always trying to get new permissions. So with his question, I'm thankful for the access that I got, but I'm always looking for more.
I know one thing that I like to do for the properties that I have access to hunt is I make contact with them all year instead of just showing up right before hunting season.
Great idea.
There's landowners that you have to build a rapport with them, and so that goes at Christmas time, but don't just show up 3 weeks before opening day and say, "Hey, I'm here to hunt." That rapport is built year-round, so you don't want to be a burden to them, but you want to call them fairly often. So that's the thing that we like to do.
Take them maple syrup, take them sweet corn,
throughout the year. Make sure they know that you appreciate it, but you're not just there during hunting season.
Yep. So, next question. This is a dandy. This one comes from Josh from Bedford, Kentucky, and Josh didn't leave his last name, but I usually, just so everybody knows, all the listeners know, usually if someone doesn't leave their last name, I just skip that question. If you're afraid to give your name, then I'm probably not going to read it.
We can't mail anything to you without your full name, usually.
Yep. And that's the reason we ask for all your information is so we know where to send you the T-shirt. You're not going to get any junk mail from us or anything like that. We're not going to call you or try to sell you something. But anyway, Josh from Bedford, Kentucky, he says, Don and Terry. And is capitalized. He wants your input, Terry. Don and Terry.
I'm just here to haul your luggage around. I don't have to answer questions.
Well, we've already kind of hit on his question. This is the one I was referring to.
All right.
It says, after listening to your podcast religiously for months, I have nothing but the utmost respect for both of you with regards to hunting and, more importantly, life in general. That's a great compliment. Thanks, Josh. My question is this. Both of you being very accomplished bow hunters, have you ever given any thought to increasing your personal challenge pursuing big bucks by using traditional archery tackle, recurve longbow, especially in a year like this with no true giants to chase after? Thanks in advance for the free T-shirt. Smiley face. From the tree stand in Kentucky, Josh. Josh, first of all, I want to make sure that some of the comments that I said before were not directed at you. I got some private messages sent to me about, using a recurve in the past. And, that's why I was a little bit defensive earlier when I gave my little spiel about that. But I have given a thought to going back to using traditional gear. But, like I said before, I got so many irons in the fire. I just don't have the time to dedicate to becoming proficient with it. You know, if I thought that I was good out to 20 yards with traditional gear, I would seriously consider it. But right now, I think I'd be hard pressed to hit a deer in the vitals at 10 yards. So I just don't think it's fair to the deer for me to do that. But great question nonetheless. Terry?
I don't think that I'm an accomplished bow hunter.
I think he's probably seen your whitetail crib segment and seen all those deer on the wall, and I think most people would disagree.
Well, I don't talk too openly about it, but I'm fighting to get back to using a compound, much less going all the way to traditional right now. I've had 3 shoulder surgeries that I don't even really talk about, and have used a crossbow for the last 6 years. And when I had knee surgery, I actually made it a conversation piece with my physical therapist with my knee that I really wanted to get back to hunting with a compound, and I have worked my absolute tail off. I hunted the last half of last year's bow season with a compound and didn't really talk about it, but tonight I had a compound in the blind with Brant, so I'm working like a dog just to get back to the point that I can use a compound instead of a crossbow. But I don't really have any desire. I mean, these animals, it's a big enough challenge for me as it is. So my bucks are my top 5 average 160. So yours average 204. I'm at a different place. I'm still searching for the net booner. That's my goal right now. And I don't even care if I shoot it with a gun, to be honest with you. So I don't have any desire to go traditional. I respect the people that do, but it's not for me.
I think my interest in traditional archery is back when I was younger, say Brant's age, you know, late teens, early 20s. My heroes, the guys that I looked up to, all shot traditional gear. You had Gene and Barry Wenzel and Roger Rothar, and, you know, those guys they were my mentors, if you will, along with Alan Foster, and Alan also shot traditional for several years. So I guess my interest comes from that seed that those guys planted years ago, and they were guys that I looked up to when I was younger. But I'd say there's the odds of me going back and shooting a deer with traditional archery tackle at this stage of my life is probably very, very, very slim. Probably not going to happen.
And that's a lot due to you not having time to invest in doing it.
Yep.
I just don't have the desire, flat out. There was an interesting comment. I know it's not exactly the topic of his question that I saw this week, and the archery industry has gotten to where people are bragging about how far they shot a deer with archery tackle versus how close you got the deer to you. And I guess my draw to archery hunting falls back more on the habitat and how you set up your hunting property and your tree stand to get that animal within 20, 25 yards. Brant set on the South Food Plot, which Don and Wes have both hunted there before. And if that deer comes out, he's got to walk through that pinch. That's going to be, what was the farthest shot I had? I think it was 26. Was the farthest shot he had to walk through. I get more a kick out of setting up my plan to be in the right spot with the right wind and having that deer within 25 yards than everybody bragging about how far they can shoot. I guess that's the thing. I know the traditional people even probably have a bigger complaint about it than I do, but the archery industry, and I don't know if it's being driven by the crossbow side or just the technology in the equipment now, this stuff with everybody, bragging about how far, I don't know if it's just because they watch Michael Waddell shoot a mule deer at 63 yards and think that's the coolest thing ever, and they're going to go to their home farm and do that. I don't get it, but that's really what bothers me more than what weapon somebody decides to shoot. I don't care what weapon you decide to shoot at. It's set up and take an ethical shot with whatever weapon you have.
Don and I were just talking last night, and I remember there's so many hunters that if there's a major deer trail that's coming out in front of their stand at 50 or 60 yards, but they've selected the best stand location based on access, a lot of times instead of managing their property to bring that deer trail to 20 yards, they're moving their stand when you could easily just make a couple changes to put that deer trail closer to you. And so managing instead of chasing them.
Or going and looking for the next gimmick that's sold at the bow shop to be able to take the 50-yard shot. That's where a lot of it is.
Now you got me fired up.
That's all right. Go for it.
I've been sitting here boiling as you guys talk back and forth. So, this evening as you guys were all sitting in stands and blinds, I went for a ride looking for deer with Brant's dad, Jay. And Jay and I were driving around talking about, how the problems of the world. I think we solved most of them, but there might be a couple we haven't yet. And I think everyone listening to this can relate. We see our country and our world falling apart right in front of our eyes. No doubt about it. It's trashed. I mean, if you look back, you don't even have to go back about 2 or 3 years and see how far society has fallen and the crap that's going on, I've seen the same thing happen with the archery industry and bow hunting. It's you can't get on social media anymore without seeing some dumbass post something about a picture of a deer with an arrow stuck up its butt or something, or they can't even take a clean picture. It's a bloody freaking mess. The leaves are it looks like somebody took a 5-gallon bucket of blood and threw it everywhere. There's no class, no good taste. And it's basically a mirror reflection of society. Our society, we've watched it fall apart. I guarantee you, everybody listening to this podcast right now knows that our society is falling apart.
Let's go, Brandon.
So has bow hunting. Bow hunting has fallen apart too. We don't even, do we have a good role model in this sport anymore? All we got's a bunch of freaking money chasers and want to be heroes. Let's let's come up with a product that may or may not work, and let's be on. Every young guy, they want a pro staff. They want 50 stickers on the back of their truck. You look at some of these guys that haven't accomplished squat, and they make a social media post, and there's hashtag this, hashtag that. They've got a list of pro staffs, as long as your arm, and they maybe shot one good buck. I'm done.
Let's go, Brandon.
You stole my closing line.
You can say it again. Well, speaking of this is kind of an interesting topic when you were talking about that. Did you have any idea that trophy pictures were going to amount to what they did today, Brent?
I knew that they would happen. I had never considered how much went into it.
So we got some really good ones, but what was the most shocking thing to you? Was it me wiping all the blood off with giving the deer a sponge bath ahead of time, or me putting taxidermy eyes in it too?
Probably the taxidermy eyes, which neat.
Yeah, so I carry a set of fake eyes, competition eyes with me, so we always put those in before we take pictures to make the deer look a little bit better. But yeah, you sat there and had to hold. Well, we made you. His buck for some reason stiffened up like no other buck that had been 3 hours dead I've ever seen. But that poor guy sat there for probably, I would say, 40 minutes getting pictures taken. And then you went to stand up, and the deer's head just stood exactly where your hands were for 40 minutes.
I was sitting there holding it the whole time, let go, and it didn't even move.
And tomorrow morning we'll get on social media, and some clown will have a picture of a bloody, gory mess
tongue hanging out
in the back of a truck full of beer cans. And guess what, people? I will be the asshole because I'm the one that has some class. Mark my word, people will listen to this, and I'll be the ass because I want people to act like they got some class and respect for the game. It's true. Same way with our society.
I yelled at
I'm good.
I yelled at my wife when we first got married because she put a Santa hat and a red nose on my taxidermy.
I did too.
On the wall.
That's my wife.
It's
yeah,
you
don't disrespect those animals.
One of the biggest fights ever. A bunch of our listeners know my buddy Patrick Simpson that we hunt a lot together with. When him and his wife got married, It wasn't my idea. It was his brother Brian's idea. So we were all in our tuxedos and everything, and they were at the church getting ready for it. Well, we had this idea that we were going to go get a deer head when we decorated their car to leave for the honeymoon. We were going to wedge it right between the two bucket seats of his car, saying that the deer was going to come between them and everything. That was the most angry that Patrick has ever been with me, is when he walked out of that and we had one of his deer heads sitting in his car decorated for. I had to apologize and take his deer head back to the house.
Good for Patrick.
Yeah. So anyway.
Yep.
Can't disrespect the deer heads.
Well,
so,
these guys that think it's cool to shoot a deer at 50 yards, I think it's cool to shoot one at 5. If you shoot one at 50, that just tells me you're not a good enough hunter to shoot one at 5. Seriously. And again, I'm going to be the jerk. I'm going to be the arrogant asshole.
You're going to be that. You're going to be that no matter what it is. So.
Yeah, well,
go try it on public,
myself,
Don. Try it on public, Don.
When I was young, I followed guys like the Wentzels and Roger Rothar that had more respect for this sport and for the game we pursue, and it rubbed off on me. And today, that's gone.
I got a question to change the topic real quick.
Okay.
Our buddy James Morgan.
Yep.
Was he hunting naked in a tree?
If he did, it wasn't with me. I can tell you that.
I hope James is listening. I didn't text him, but I saw he's ripped. I didn't realize he was that big. He's a big boy.
Yeah,
he's
been working out.
I think he was shirtless in a tree stand with a safety harness on the other day. I didn't get to make fun of him on it. So
I don't know what he wears.
James, an explanation is necessary. I figured he'd be hanging in a saddle if he was dressed like that.
That's between you and James. We'll stay out of that one.
All right. James, I expect an explanation. So, is that all you got for tonight?
I got another one if you got time.
Go for it.
The last question comes from Matt Jackson from Pleasant Plain, Ohio. Says, do you have any tips to judging a deer's score while hunting? Is using binoculars a must for this? Every year my goal is to kill a mature deer and if possible a deer over 150 inches. But when buck fever kicks in and a buck is coming into bow range, that can get tricky. Sometimes we only have 10 to 30 seconds to put a kill shot on a deer, so we have to think quick. I live in southwest Ohio and typically only get 1 or 2 chances a year at a buck of that caliber. I really enjoy the podcast every week. Keep up the good work, and may God bless you guys this season. Well, Matt, all I can do is tell you how I judge bucks. And I judge bucks, live bucks, when I'm hunting based on bucks that I have on my wall that I know their score because I've measured them. And for example, I've got a 10-pointer that scores right at 150 and another 10-pointer that scores 153. I've got three other 10-pointers that score right at 170. I think one's 169, one's 171, and one's 172. So I know the difference between a 150-inch 10-pointer and a 170-inch 10-pointer because I get to look at those bucks all the time on my wall. And it's the same way with 8-pointers and on and on. And basically, when I'm trying to judge a deer in a hurry, I'm comparing it to something that I've already killed that I know the score of. And I know that gives me an advantage that most guys are not going to have. But just being honest, that's exactly how I do it.
Any ideas, Wes?
Nope. No
experience.
Other advice.
Well, it's just going to be experience.
I've
shot the wrong buck before. I've shot a buck that had some serious ground shrinkage.
I think
you learned from it.
Yeah. Don made a comment several podcasts ago about somebody should be judged by what they pass, not what by they shoot. And if you pass a deer and it end up being one that you want to shoot, well, that deer will be there to chase another day.
Yep.
Usually your first gut reaction is if you got to talk yourself into it, usually it's the wrong decision. I've noticed that over the years. If he starts looking better as time goes on when he's in front of you, usually you're talking yourself into killing something.
That's exactly where I was going, Terry. If you've got to talk yourself into it, you're probably going to regret it.
Yeah. But it's like I think we talked about it last week. The lessons you learn from messing up mean more to you than what you learn when you succeed. And I think I've had a couple situations, actually 2 deer that I've shot, that I walked up to it and just went crap.
I've had it happen to me.
And you just learn from it, move on. You be thankful for the opportunity to kill what you did.
Yep.
You tag it like the man that you need to be and accept it and wait till next year.
Yep.
So
if you are honest and you put your tag on it like you should, you don't try to sneak it out of the woods, you don't put somebody else's tag on it, you man up, you put your tag on it, you'll learn from that. And you'll be a better hunter in the future.
Yep. All right, that's a good question.
Yep.
Lots of experience. So,
well, should we give our guest one last chance to make closing comments?
Yeah, well, you got to wrap this whole thing up there, young man.
Just that I'm thankful for the opportunity, for the experience. I've learned a whole lot being able to come up here and hang out with Don and hunt.
You learned how to blow a doe out of the field with me tonight. Hey, I'm not too proud to talk about it. We got busted tonight, and nobody ever admits when they blow a doe out of the field. And I know it happens to everybody sooner or later, but we blew a doe out. But we had a buck come in afterwards.
We did.
So, but I taught you something, how to blow a doe out. But yeah, what about you, Pops? You ain't got a headset on, but trade him out here.
I just the experience to meet you guys and has been huge. This was just a huge opportunity all the way around. I was actually kind of glad that Brant didn't kill one on the first stand with Don. What a great guy to mentor my son, Don Higgins. So just very thankful.
I'm 44 and he's still mentoring me. So
very good.
And Al Foster's still mentoring him, so it works all the way around, right?
I got a lot of people mentoring me. As you can tell, I need lots of help.
Especially when we get on a rant about the archery industry, then that goes a little sideways.
It does, but, as we close, the whole Lester's feet thing that you started, Terry, it's just – it's hard for me to put into words how I feel because I was blessed with 2 healthy daughters. I have no idea what it's like to have a sick child, especially one with a life-threatening illness. And, we're trying to give back, but at the same time, I just because of this, I made 2 new friends that I hope are friends for life. And, I think they found out when they came up and met me that I'm nothing special. I'm just a simple country boy like they are and just chasing my dreams. And I hope, if anything, that Brant has seen from me that, you don't have to follow the typical path that a lot of people take in life by going out and getting a job. You can chase your dreams, and if you chase them long enough and hard enough, a lot of times they're going to come true. We live in the greatest country that this earth has ever known. And although we're headed in a downward spiral, it's still, I said it before, this is the best time I've ever seen in my life for a person to start a business. And, I hope there's something that Brant picked up beyond deer hunting. And I hope someday that 20 years from now, 30 years from now, there's a young man that he didn't know that comes to him and picks up a bit of advice that helps him in his life, and all we can do is pass it on. But, we're trying to help these families with the sick kids, but at the same time, we're gaining things too. We're gaining friends as we do it, and I think next year's raffle or fundraiser, however we do it, is going to be bigger than it was this year. And the bigger it gets is the more people we can help. So I want to thank everybody that bought tickets. Unfortunately, everybody couldn't win. I wish I had, a way that I could take everybody hunting, but it's just not possible. And, but buy a ticket next year. Maybe next year will be your lucky year.
Well, real quick before we close, there's so many new listeners to this podcast that have come on. Real quick, maybe if it's all right, I just talk about Lester's feet just for a minute before you close out. the idea really was a snowball thing that we had no idea, Don and I, how big it was going to get. My oldest daughter, Kaylin, found a family in Kentucky with 2 little girls with leukemia at the same time, and we just wanted to figure out a way to help them. And what we thought originally was maybe raise $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 and help somebody else. Don really challenged me to let's do something bigger. And I was actually telling Brant the story of it is we had no intention of starting a nonprofit. We had no intention of starting a foundation. But you guys who are listening rallied around this idea. And I just wish everybody could have met my grandfather. This foundation was named after him, and he was a very avid bow hunter. He's the one who got me hunting. But when you're a little kid and you look at somebody and say that's my hero, that was my grandfather. He fought in World War II. He was the gunner on the front of an amphibious assault boat that went on to the beachhead and let the Marines run out the front door. He was the gunner on the front of that boat. I mean, you talk about a man's man, right?
Yep.
So then he comes back from the war, plays Major League Baseball as a pitcher, and then goes and works in law enforcement. So when you're a little kid and you're looking at a war hero, a Major League Baseball player, and a cop, that's like 3 of your big things that become a hero. So from the time I was little, I always looked up to him. But he always was the most selfless man that I've ever been around. And if he's somewhere right now in heaven looking down on all this smiling, that's really what's special to me about it, because there's a lot of people that are rallying together to try to do something good with a hobby of theirs in deer hunting, and I think that's what's the coolest thing about it.
Well, I'm sure he is looking down, smiling, proud as can be, Terry.
I hope so.
Yep.
All right, well, if you don't have nothing else, why don't you take us out with our sponsors?
All right, we want to thank our sponsors, BuyAFarm.com, Victory Chevrolet, 360 Hunting Blinds, Real World Wildlife Products, Matthews Archery, Lone Wolf Tree Stands, WildlifeFarming.com, Quiet Cat, Vortex. Let's go, Brendan!